Secretary James Mattis, you can see him on the ground there. He is visiting troops in Texas. They are deployed to support the U.S. Border Patrol. They are in Donna, Texas right now. That is near McAllen. This, as the Department of Homeland Security says, they are aware of a small group of migrants from that larger migrant caravan who have now reached the U.S.-Mexico border. But there you can see Mattis on the ground talking to those who have been deployed. This is Outnumbered, and I'm Melissa Francis. Here today is Fox News contributor Lisa Booth, Fox News analyst and co-host of Benson and Harf on Fox News Radio, Marie Harf, co-host of Fox and Friends First, Jillian Mealy, and joining us today on the couch, Steve Hilton, host of The Next Revolution. Very nice to see you. Your shoelaces match Marie's pants. Yeah, so you guys coordinated there. I love it. Yeah. Perfect.
So first example of cooperation in the new Congress, cross-party.
All right, there you go. Let's get right to it. Now to the other southern border, where Defense Chief Mattis comes as U.S. troops are stationed in Texas, Arizona, and California to help with security. This, as Reuters reports that 400 migrants arrived in the Mexican border city of Tijuana by bus on Tuesday. The Department of Homeland Security says they are aware of this. A short time ago, Defense Secretary Mattis spoke to reporters during his flight to the border, and he says that right now military personnel are playing a supporting role. Watch.
The Department of Defense missions do not involve military personnel at this time directly participating in any law enforcement. Law enforcement is left in the hands of the Customs and Border Police, who have the statutory authority to carry that out. At the present, I do not anticipate military personnel coming into direct contact with migrants.
This comes as Republicans are facing a big test over funding for President Trump's border wall in the lame duck session. Steve, let me bring it to you first as we continue to look at these pictures of Defense Secretary Mattis there live on the ground. First of all, there was all that talk, you know, that the caravan, they were months away, they weren't going to get there. Now they're there, so at least a portion of it, so that, you know, the timing on what the critics were saying of the president wasn't exactly accurate. At the same time, I was watching Ken Paxton from Texas earlier today saying that the group that's arriving appears to be doing what the president asked, which is to present themselves at a port of entry and ask for asylum. That's fantastic progress, no?
It is. And there's a really important, simple point here, which is the critics, as you said, were talking about the fact that it's all so far away and it's not a big deal. But even more than that, they were saying the whole thing was cooked up as some kind of election stunt to gin up the base. This is not a real issue. Why is the president whipping up fear and hatred? Well, because it's a real issue. It's serious. There really are people crossing the border illegally, not just the caravan. That's part of it. It's a really big issue. That's why it's really encouraging to see a consistency from what happened before the election afterwards.
Okay, we want to pause for 1 second here because Senate Republicans right now, we understand Mitch McConnell is there somewhere getting, oh, there you see him there on the right. They are discussing the leadership elections. Let's listen in.
The leader mentioned we have had divided government in the past, and obviously Republicans can work very well. And we've demonstrated that, I think, in the last couple of years. And in fact, we're going to have a bill on the floor that's going to pass, a big piece of legislation that will pass with a big bipartisan majority. And so we look forward to taking on the issues that are important to the American people, and we hope that our colleagues on the other side of the aisle will work with us as well. And I would say, with respect to the Democrats here in the Senate and in the House, that we hope that they will decide that they want to play a constructive role and put up a record of legislative accomplishment rather than spending all their time launching investigations. And I hope that that will be the spirit that we see out of the House of Representatives, because I know certainly here in the United States Senate, among our conference and our leadership, we look forward anxiously to working in a constructive and bipartisan way to address the issues that the American people expect us to take on.
I'm the new chairman of the Republican Conference, and committed to continue to work in a bipartisan way. There's lots that can be done in a bipartisan way, and we have been doing that. The water infrastructure bill passed 99-1, recently signed by the president. Bills on patients could know the cheapest cost of drugs. That passed in a bipartisan way. So in divided government, there's still a lot that can be done and will be done. But I would like to take this opportunity to introduce to you the new vice chairman of the Republican Conference, Joni Ernst.
Oh,
Joni.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you, everyone. It is a great honor for me to join this tremendous leadership team as the Republican Conference Vice Chair. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to share our wonderful, overwhelming message of prosperity here in the United States, not only with the members of this body, but also with our fantastic constituents back home. So again, it's an honor to join this leadership team. Looking forward to working with all of you in the future. Thanks so much.
Well, it's a real opportunity to follow Dr. Barrasso as the policy chair. I think 2 points to make. One is that Republican policies, particularly on the economy, are producing great results. And two, I expect in the coming year that the Senate is the most likely place to talk about those policies, to drive those policies, to try to link those policies with what's happening in the country, and I look forward to that.
Well, I'm grateful that my colleagues would place such trust in me as their next chairman of the NRSC, and I look forward to serving all of them. I also look forward to bringing an Indiana voice to the leadership table so that we can build on the successes of the last 2 years.
Grassley's shy, but he's our new president pro tem. Said he didn't want to say anything. I don't understand. That's right. I'll take a couple of questions already.
Mr. Leader.
Yeah.
Mr. Leader, the bill to change sexual harassment rules in the House and in the Senate has languished all year. Are you committed to getting it done?
Yeah, we are. I was talking to Senator Klobuchar at length about that last night. She and Senator Blunt have taken the point on it. I don't know, Roy, if you want to add anything or not, but we're working on getting that done before the end of the year. Yeah.
Do you think we could see a partial government shutdown in December, and what might be some of the...
No, we're not going to do that.
Senator McConnell, in the past you've said that you don't think that legislation to protect the special counsel is necessary. Given what's happened over the past week, has your view changed?
No. I mean, there's been no indication. As you can imagine, I talk to the president fairly often. No indication that the Mueller investigation will not be allowed to finish, and it should be allowed to finish. We know how the president feels about the Mueller investigation, but he's never said he wants to shut it down. I've never heard anybody down there say they want to shut it down. I think it's in no danger, and so I don't think...
That is, as you can see, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell there, and they did sort of a round robin of the new leadership and some of the existing leadership, but as they come in here, that will be taking over in January in the Senate. We heard from Joni Ernst. We heard from Todd Young from Indiana as well, and now he's answering questions kind of about what's on the docket there going forward. But we want to get back to our discussion here on the couch about the border and the border situation. I'm not sure if you finished your point before. We were talking about the fact you can see General Mattis there, and they're providing a backup capacity. This has been a controversy. What's your take?
Well, just to emphasize, I think that those critics who said that this was all a stunt, the president talking about this, emphasizing the caravan, sending the troops to the border, it was all just political, are clearly being proved wrong. There's a serious issue here, and it's really good to see that same approach from the administration being implemented after the election as before the election.
Marie, why do you laugh?
Well, as one of those critics, I think you're being a little too sort of black and white here, right? The reason I didn't like the president's rhetoric isn't because I don't think illegal immigration or the caravan aren't important issues. He made it sound like he called them invaders. He made it sound really scary. He whipped up all of this anxiety and fear about it as part of his closing argument in a political campaign. So it's somewhere in the middle, right? It's a serious issue, but it's not how the president portrayed it. And the fact that he hasn't really focused on it since the election, I think, is telling. But Lisa, before you hop in here, I want to be very clear. There are more troops now on the border with Mexico than we have fighting ISIS in the Middle East. Let's talk about the real threat
here.
Well,
we've beaten ISIS in the Middle East.
Well, let's talk about the real threat here. And also, it's unclear what the mission of these troops is going to be. It's absolutely unclear.
Wait. I mean, because I want to keep this in order here. I mean, because a lot of Democrats make that point, and you talk to anyone in the military, and they say it depends what your mission on the ground is. Right. And right here, it's support, and they're trying to help as people are coming in and that sort of thing. So we've heard both sides of that argument.
Many former military leaders, including Martin Dempsey, who was chairman of the Joint Chiefs, has said this is a political stunt.
Stop. And also on the second point where you're saying that he was whipping up frenzy and fear, Lisa, I would ask you that what he was trying to do was saying, don't break in illegally, go to a port of entry, and let's do this in order. And they're turning that way. So rather than, as Marie says, he's trying to scare people in an election, he was effective in his message, and now we're able to help people in the proper way.
Well, and the administration said that that was their goal by sending troops to the southern border. It was meant to be a deterrent, which is the same. And it worked. Which was the same point of wanting a border wall also to serve as a deterrent. And President Trump's been talking about immigration since day one. So you can't say that this conversation solely about the midterms. Also, I think most Americans, when you see thousands of people tearing down the wall into Mexico, look at this as an invasion. And so I think Americans look at this as a law enforcement issue. He's also not the first president to send troops to the southern border. President Obama did. President George W. Bush did. President H.W. Bush did as well. The list goes on. So that's also unfair. And I really think what needs to happen here are changes to our laws regarding asylum, because you look at 80% pass the initial interview test, and then only 20% are granted asylum in immigration court. There are also other loopholes and things that are being taken advantage of that need to be addressed. So perhaps people can come together and make those changes.
Let me get Jillian in here as we are watching these live pictures on the ground here. Jillian, it is a step in the right direction that this breakaway, the part of the larger group, don't you think, has gone to the right port of entry? Right. We don't know what's going to happen with the rest.
No, we
but
don't.
This is the first group.
A lot of it is to be determined at this point, right? But, you know, Marie, you talk about a mission overseas. You can have a mission overseas. You can have a mission here at home. You can do those things at once and accomplish goals in both of those things. And look, when you look at numbers, we had numbers on Fox and Friends First this morning from U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. They made more than 90,000 apprehensions in fiscal year 2018 and 17. That's a lot. That number needs to be controlled. That number can't keep increasing. That's the problem.
It's been decreasing for 10 years, actually.
Well, we saw, but the difference is,
I mean, I'm telling you the number we had this morning.
But it's been decreasing.
No, but the problem is with
even one is too many. Even one illegal immigrant is too many.
All right, brand new developments on the president's response to questions from special counsel Robert Mueller, what we know now. Plus, sharp elbows thrown around the key Florida races, still undecided as the recount drags on. The latest delay and whether cooler heads will prevail.
Trump and Scott are attempting to bully the election officials in Florida out of doing their jobs in an attempt to win this election. It's just plain wrong. It's un-American.
To complete a machine recount. This as a judge extends tomorrow's deadline to November 20th. Under Florida law, the State Elections Commission must certify results no later than November 20th. So this new ruling could throw another wrench into the process. And all of this comes as Senator Bill Nelson and Governor Rick Scott continue with their sharp elbows. Nelson, along with Chuck Schumer, hammering the Republican at a news conference yesterday. Take a listen to this.
Sadly, it's become clear that my opponent isn't interested in making sure that every lawful vote is counted.
We will not have a rerun of 2000, when bullying and intimidation ruled and created a rush to judgment, so that to this day, many Americans believe that election was unfairly decided.
Governor Scott is firing back, saying, quote, "It's nice to see Bill Nelson emerge from hiding, but it's surprising that he would want to appear with Chuck Schumer, who's using him as a pawn and dragging his legacy through the mud in an effort to change election laws ahead of 2020. And Rick Scott isn't waiting for the official results either. He's on Capitol Hill today for freshman orientation and the traditional group photo with new GOP senators. For the latest, we go to Griff Jenkins, who is joining us from Broward County Board of Elections. Griff, a lot going on. What do we need to know?
Lisa, good afternoon. You need to know that the vote count here, the recount in Broward County, at one point was in a serious question of whether they're going to meet their deadline. But take a look. They are now 55 to 60% done with the recount. They did the early votes. That's about 55% of the entire vote. They've got to finish the mail-in and the day of voting. But they believe here that they are easily going to meet the 3 p.m. deadline tomorrow. They should be finished sometime tomorrow morning. These machines, by the way, much more newer, much more capable than the ones up in Palm Beach County, where it's really quite in question on whether they're going to meet their deadline. Just a little while ago, we were hearing that the election supervisor up there, Susan Booker, is saying that they've fixed the faulty machines and they're starting to recount ballots that have to be recounted a second time because of the problems. It's really in question as to what happens if Palm Beach County doesn't meet it. But the folks here in Broward County say they're going to meet it. And the lawyers here for both Democrats and Republicans who are in this room monitoring this process all believe they were headed for a manual recount because of the narrow margin coming out of these results on Thursday. Now, you mentioned Governor Scott, who is in D.C. He's making news now because he came under fire and Senator Nelson calling on him to recuse himself. He has done so just a little while ago. Governor Scott tweeting this, saying, "I have recused myself from certifying results on the Election Canvassing Commission in 2014, and I will do so again this year. This is nothing new. Bill Nelson is confused and doesn't even know how Florida works. I have no role in supervising or overseeing the ongoing recount process." So that's what's going on here, Lisa, as they race to meet this deadline that looks like it's going to happen in the much-aligned Broward County. Lisa?
Thanks, Griff. All right, Steve, so there's a lot to unpack.
Yes.
All right, so look, we're now a week past Election Day. Now, at least Palm Beach County is going to have till November 20th. What do you make of all of this?
Well, first of all, look at what Bill Nelson said there. He said that the Republicans aren't interested in making sure that every lawful vote is counted. You could literally just as easily put it around the other way and say that the Democrats aren't interested in making sure that every vote that's counted is lawful. That's what's going on down there with the intervention of Mark Elias and so on. But the overall conclusion, I think, is just what a mess. I mean, look, we don't need the Russians to mess up our elections. Oh. These totally incompetent election officials down in Florida can do it all on their own. I think it's really embarrassing.
Melissa, I heard you say during when
I mean, it is embarrassing. I would say that when I'm watching this, I would say to myself, if I lived in Hillsborough County or any of the other 65 counties, why does my vote count so much less than if I lived in one of these two counties? Because in those counties, they're allowed to break the law, do it later, in terms of you have to turn them in by this point, you have to meet this deadline, like all the laws that are in place. If I followed the law in Hillsborough County and I didn't make it, my vote didn't count. But if you had extra time and extra help over in these other counties, why is their vote more important than my vote over in one of the other 65 counties?
And Marie, so Bill Nelson, one of his attorneys, Mark Elias, he has previously stated in one of his candidates that he was representing, a Democrat, in 2016, I believe, that a 10,000 lead was insurmountable. And he called on the opponent to step down, concede, don't waste taxpayer dollars. But here you have Rick Scott with an over 12,000 lead. Why is that not insurmountable?
Well, under Florida election law, if the election is at a certain point that it's close enough, it is mandated that it goes.
But he could deny it and say he doesn't want it.
Let me finish what I'm saying before you jump back in, okay? So under Florida election law, it is mandated that if it's within a certain amount, they do first a machine recount. If it's still within a certain amount, they do a manual recount. I think that it is good that they are following the way that it outlines what a recount should do. And I think everyone involved, you even heard Andrew Gillum, whose race is also in a recount, say, I support the recount knowing full well I will probably not come, the outcome of the election will not be changed. I do think it's important that every ballot is counted, every legal ballot, and that we should let the recount go to its legal conclusion as outlined in Florida law. I also think Florida and other states should take a very hard look before 2020 at ballot design, at how these balloting balloting is done, how they're counted, and actually some states need to do better, Florida included. I'm not dismissing Florida's problems here, but I think that we should let the recount go to its legal conclusion as outlined in Florida law. There's nothing wrong with that, and there's been no evidence of fraud. There's been zero evidence of fraud.
What do you call mixing illegal ballots in with legal ones? And I'm fully aware with election law, but there seems to be 2 counties that are having issues here, and they've flouted Florida law. You've got 2 counties that have not been following Florida law in terms of how they're supposed to be vote by mail and absentee ballots were supposed to be accounted for 30 minutes after the polls closed, and then 45-minute updates. They've not been doing that.
The judge dinged them for that, and also said, here's the way the recount should proceed. So the legal system in Florida...
you can't have the law, follow the law on one hand and not on the other. It says that if you don't sit there and turn in the total number within 30 minutes afterwards, and hang on, if you don't do that, then the remedy is it counts what happened at the closing of the booths, and they don't want to do that. And they don't want to follow that remedy of the law, but then you're saying, let's follow the law here, let's not follow the law here. That's what you just said.
Let's get Jillian
every other
in here.
county they didn't count if you don't get it in time. That's the law. You're saying follow the law, then don't follow the law.
Right.
We're either going to follow it. That's exactly what you're saying.
Not what I'm saying, Melissa.
And one of the things that, I find fascinating about this, and sticking with the conversation of following the law, is, you hear Democratic lawmakers saying, we should possibly asking judges to throw out the signatures on the mail ballots, matching the voter signatures. Hear all these stories about asking to kind of get rid of some of these rules a little bit. Did you guys see Marco Rubio's tweet about that? He said, look, if you got 2 teams playing a football game, right, and the one team's down by 2 points, and the other team in the final seconds kicks a field goal, you won by a point. The other team can't come back and say, we want to change that so it's not 3 points, it's 1. Like, these are the laws. You have to follow the laws and stick with them as they are written, as you talked about.
I
agree with you on that.
I think we can all at least agree. I think we can all agree that this should be done. This could have been done in a lot better manner than it has been, regardless of what side of the
all the votes that are going to be counted are legal votes. There's a lot of suspicion.
I do.
Right. Well, only if you win.
No, your conspiracy theory has no evidence, Steve.
All right, well, House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi pulling out all of the stops to become Speaker of the House once again. But now reports of a potential setback in Pelosi's bid to take back the gavel. Details are ahead, plus a high-stakes meeting moments from now as Republicans decide on the next House Minority Leader. Establishment favorite Kevin McCarthy is facing off against Jim Jordan of the House Conservative Freedom Caucus. More on that showdown coming up next. You're going to want to stay tuned.
Leader Kevin McCarthy facing off against Freedom Caucus co-founder Jim Jordan. Now Politico is reporting that President Trump has urged Kevin McCarthy to strike a deal with Jordan, perhaps supporting him for a committee leadership post. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel is live on Capitol Hill with the latest. Mike.
Melissa, good afternoon. There should be quite some debate in that House Republican conference meeting as Kevin McCarthy and Jim Jordan square off. Otherwise, here on Capitol Hill, we're seeing a lot of familiar faces earning new terms as member of leadership. There are also some brand new faces here on Capitol Hill trying to find their way around the Capitol grounds. The incoming freshman class in the House posed in front of the Capitol this morning. This as Nancy Pelosi makes her pitch to colleagues to become Speaker of the House again.
As we open this session, let us just find our common ground as to how we go forward. First, let us recognize that we achieved a great victory. In a gerrymandered, voter-suppressed map, we were able to sweep up to almost 40 seats so far and count up to 40 seats for the Democrats in the majority.
But a number of those newly elected House Democrats ran against Pelosi for Speaker, and a veteran Democrat talked about needing new leadership as well.
I'm not making a case to anyone. I'm voting what I think is right. I believe we need change, and so I'm supporting change. I've not talked to any of the new members. I'm not sure that I will. But I think that if, in fact, we were elected on change, then we should have change.
On the Senate side, the top leaders will remain the same, with Chuck Schumer leading the Democrats, promising to keep the Republicans in check, and Mitch McConnell returning as majority leader.
We're excited about maintaining our majority and growing our majority. We're confident we're going to have 53 Republican senators to set the agenda next year, to continue, obviously, with our top priority, which is the confirmation of lifetime appointments to the judiciary. And, you know, we have divided government often in this country. We've had divided government more often than not.
Much of the afternoon for House Republicans will be focused on sorting out their leadership elections. Melissa?
All right, Mike Emanuel, thank you so much for that. So what sticks out to me here is this idea of the Freedom Caucus kind of, you know, taking a back seat at this point. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I mean, the truth is, though, it matters much less now that they're in the minority. Whether it's Kevin McCarthy, who looks like he's going to get it, or Jim Jordan or anyone else, much less important because they're really out of it. The relationships that matter now are going to be between the president and Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell in terms of getting things done. Obviously, McConnell's right to say that the Senate can proceed on the judicial appointments without worrying about anything else. That's true. But in terms of advancing any kind of legislation, and remember what the president said, I thought it was really interesting in his first press conference the day after the elections. He showed he really understands the new dynamic. And he made this argument that actually it could be easier to get things done now.
I think that's true.
Because he's saying, look, let's take a look at what the Democrats want, and then maybe they can bring some of their senators with them, and we can get over the 60-vote threshold to actually pass things. The president said that. He really understands how it all works. The question is, will the Democrats allow that to happen, given what they want to do in terms of investigation and obstruction?
Well, we're going to talk about the Democrats a little bit more coming up, but Lisa, I would ask you, I mean, it's an interesting idea to put Jordan in the attack position as maybe the ranking member in the Judiciary Committee. He's good at doing those battles. Would that be enough to keep the Freedom Caucus happy?
Well, that seems like that's what the angle is here for Jim Jordan. We know that President Trump is privately trying to, you know, make that happen as well. So I think that is the angle. But the House Freedom Caucus has lost a lot of leverage here because before they had power where Republicans were in the majority and they needed to try to do things along party line basis, they needed to keep their caucus together and intact. And now that Democrats are in charge, their goal is going to be keeping their caucus in check and together. And the House Freedom Caucus becomes less relevant. So I think that's going to be something interesting to watch for this next Congress as well.
And the Freedom Caucus, I mean, they were part of the group that derailed healthcare. I mean, they were very vocal about the fact that they didn't like what was being put forward on the Republican side, which is fair enough. But at the end of the day, when you didn't have a solution, every Republican got punished for that.
Well, and not having solutions, that's one of the big things that Jim Jordan has been advocating for and talking about, that you have to get solutions to a lot of these things that were promised. He said on Fox and Friends this morning that they haven't done key things that they told the American people they were going to do. He mentioned replacing Obamacare. He mentioned reforming welfare. He mentioned security, securing the border and building the wall. So I think whoever is in that spot needs to be in the position to be able to bring the Republicans together and get things done in these next 2 years.
Yeah. Do you think that Kevin McCarthy has a better chance, Marie, of reaching across the aisle towards Democrats or no?
Maybe. I think that Kevin McCarthy and Nancy Pelosi, if she is Speaker, and I'm not convinced she will be, she doesn't have the votes as of right now. They know each other. They've known each other for a long time. Possibly, but I think there's an interesting dynamic in the Republican caucus on the Senate side, actually, because yes, they will have expanded their majority by a little bit, not by a lot, but by a little bit. But you have people coming in like Mitt Romney, who is not a fan of Donald Trump. Yeah. He, I think, will try and play the role of Bob Corker or a Jeff Flake once he gets there. Now, both of those men that I just mentioned ended up voting with President Trump most of the time, right? But I don't think that, even though Mitch McConnell expanded his majority, that it's necessarily going to be a blank check or rubber stamp, whatever image we want to use here, on the Republican side. There are going to be some thorns in the side of Donald Trump that they're going to have to deal with, Mitt Romney being one of them, Lisa Murkowski, of course, sort of a perennial.
Susan Collins.
A perennial. I think Susan Collins has lost her status as that. I think with Kavanaugh, she redeemed herself as a full-blown member of the Republican Party that doesn't really vote independently ever anymore.
Just one quick thing on the politics in the House. One thing that's interesting is that, you know, we talk about the discussion between, or the debate between the Freedom Caucus, they're more conservative, and the rest of them. But the thing that's really been missing is a group of of House members and senators who are really with the president in terms of his populist message and his agenda, which is actually, I mean, if you think about it, all of the members in both chambers are really to the right of where the president was in terms of
swamp creatures.
Yeah, and remember, the way he ran was not a traditional Republican. He was not running as a conservative. He didn't talk about reforming welfare. He talked about universal health care. You know, and what's interesting to me is that populism that won him the 2016 election and that people, especially working class voters, flocked to, that is not shared by the Republicans in the House. And I don't know whether that's changed a little bit with this election, but I think that is one of the big problems.
I think McCarthy will be with him more because McCarthy's gotten pretty chummy with President Trump. So I think he will probably be a little bit more in line, but we'll see. You know,
that's a great thing to watch for. Really smart insight. Yeah. All right. President Trump's legal team could hand over written responses to Robert Mueller's questions any day now. Does this mean the Russia probe is wrapping up, and whether we will see a sit-down interview?
And not obstruction, and could be submitted by the end of this week under an agreement reached with the Mueller team to, quote, move forward. Meantime, Senators Jeff Flake and Chris Coons pushing for legislation to shield Mueller from interference in the wake of Jeff Sessions' resignation and President Trump's appointment of the new acting AG.
Senator Flake is talking with his caucus and his caucus leadership. It is my hope and expectation that we will find a way to get a floor vote on this bill. One option would be to try and attach it to a spending bill, but that's several weeks away, so it's my hope that we'll get something done before that.
Some Republicans have said they will support the bill, the bipartisan bill, but Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is skeptical, as is Republican Senator John Kennedy.
I've never believed the bill was constitutional. I don't think that the Congress can tell the President of the United States who he can hire and fire. And there's no indication whatsoever that I've been able to see, based on deeds, not words, deeds, that the President intends to fire Mr. Mueller.
All right, so here we go, guys. I guess the question is, how much longer can this last, Steve?
It feels like it could literally last forever. I'm just telling you, it was so great, I thought, in the midterms, where we were talking about real issues that affect people, you know, the economy and immigration and healthcare. We didn't have all this Russia nonsense. It's so depressing to see it back. I think that just to be specific about it, though, this question of protecting the Mueller inquiry and all the rest of it, it just feels to me like it's completely ridiculous. The president has never given any indication that he wants to shut down the Mueller investigation or anything like that. I think the real issue is why there isn't an equivalent investigation on the other side into what went on with the Hillary campaign, with the CIA and the FBI and all that deep state malarkey that happened prior to the 2016 election and afterwards. There's so much there that we hear dribs and drabs of. You need that investigation.
Right, because nothing ever comes of these investigations. It just
back up your
well, there's no evidence for collusion, but we still have that.
I can give you a laundry list of evidence of collusion.
Melissa, don't you think at some point, and maybe we've reached that point, that the public is getting tired of the investigations?
I know I'm getting tired of it, mainly because nothing ever comes of the investigation. So they spend all this time and energy on it. And the idea that they would come together and draft legislation to protect an investigation, I mean, if that isn't the swampiest thing you've ever heard in the world, to waste time and money and effort on that, it makes me want to send them all home for a nap.
Well,
like, just go away.
And that sounds nice, though.
Yeah.
If anything, Mueller has too wide of a scope and has been going on, two different paths. I think ultimately the special counsel will come to the same determination that both the House and Senate Intel committees have come to, and that's that there is no collusion, which is something that we've known.
Is that just a guess? Because you have no idea
it's something
what
that the
Mueller
House
has.
and Senate committees have already reached.
No, but you have no idea what Mueller has.
Also, I think that voters have grown sick and tired of this. The Washington Examiner flagged this in exit polling, where 54% of voters thought that the special counsel's probe was politically motivated. So I think opinions have swayed on this. They're tired of it. They're weary. They want this to go away. They want Congress and the president just to do their job. Also, I think even if he does come to the conclusion that there is nothing there, which I believe is the case, it's not going away because you're going to have incoming Adam Schiff in the House Intel Committee doing investigations, Russia. So we're going to be hearing about this over the next 2 years, no matter what, unfortunately.
And Marie, you say we don't know what Mueller has, and that's true. I mean, we don't know what he has that is factual. But I think at this point, everybody wants the information out. They want the questions answered. They want to know the truth to be able to move on from this.
We absolutely want the answers and the truth. I agree with you. Part of that will be what Donald Trump says in these answers to the questions that, as you mentioned in the opening here, he is currently drafting. So we can't get to the end of this until the president gives some answers. He's apparently doing that right now. I think how long it continues after that will be dependent on what the answers are and on what other information Mueller has. So I think that's the common sense way to proceed here. Mueller is trying to get through all of this. There's a lot of issues here. He's indicted a number of people. He's passed off a number of cases to other judicial jurisdictions.
Not in relation to collusion, though.
And he is. First of all, Lisa, you have no idea what Bob Mueller has seen. You have none. It is much more than the Senate and the House because he has much more legal authority.
Peter Strzok didn't want to be part of the special. I know that Peter Strzok didn't want to be part. Well, they'd already had a counterintelligence investigation that was ongoing, and Peter Strzok didn't actually want to work on the special counsel investigation because he said nothing was there. You have the House and Senate. Seen nothing. This has been going on for a really long time.
And there's a lot of people familiar with it who've said they've seen a lot. And by the way, all those people in the House and the Senate,
Schiff, who's been leaking
all those people in the House and the Senate
allegedly
have partisan reasons to spin this. Mueller is not.
Maybe
Mueller
we can agree.
Serious.
Maybe we can all agree that we hope that we find out all of this information very soon.
Well,
I agree.
I agree.
All right,
you win. But there's one more thing.
I think there's a lot of there.
We've got to have some accountability for the corruption that clearly went on within the FBI, the Justice Department, and so on, that we have seen evidence for in those texts and all the rest of it.
All right. Well, still much more to come, including House Democrats set to choose who will lead their caucus as Speaker of the House. Will Nancy Pelosi take the gavel again, or will someone else challenge her and win?
Capitol Hill is buzzing as both parties vote on Senate leadership today. Democrats not making changes at the top, as we mentioned earlier, keeping Chuck Schumer as minority leader and Dick Durbin as whip. Meantime, Nancy Pelosi is working to court House newcomers ahead of a caucus vote for Speaker scheduled 2 weeks from today. She faces a new roadblock with 10 Democrats from the Problem Solvers caucus threatening to withhold their support unless Pelosi agrees to a proposed change of some House rules. At least 2 congressional leaders have already signed on, Democratic Whip Steny Hoyer and Republican Whip Steve Scalise. Meantime, Democrats who oppose Pelosi for Speaker say a change is what voters want.
The issue is, after 16 years of the same leadership, we need a new direction. And that's what people voted for this November, and I think that's what people are looking for in the new Congress.
But Pelosi's supporters say none of that matters with no one else stepping up.
And I think it does say something about where we stand if no member of our caucus is willing to stand up and take on Nancy Pelosi and offer an alternative.
So, Steve, Congressman Kildee is right in that you can't beat something with nothing. There are rumors, though, that there's a handful of Democrats, people like Seth Moulton, who are actually going to challenge her. And I don't think she has the votes today to be the next speaker. What do you think?
I think that you should not bet against her ability to just exercise the raw power to protect her position, just observing how she's been such a survivor and so strong. But I think that if you just take a step back and think, well, what's in the interest of the country? What do we want to see here? It seems to me that actually Nancy Pelosi could have a constructive relationship with President Trump and actually get things done. I'm also really interested in the Problem Solvers Caucus asserting themselves here. They're from a group called No Labels, which is all about promoting bipartisanship and the parties working together on practical ways to, as their name suggests, solve problems. I think it's really cool that they're doing that and really using their leverage to try and make change happen. I think in the end, that is what people want to see, real things happening.
Melissa, expand on this, because you agreed with Steve that maybe, I mean, Donald Trump used to be a Democrat. He says he's a deal maker. Do you think he can work with Pelosi?
I know. So I've been shot down in many circles with this theory. So just keep that in mind, all you hopeful people out there. But I feel like Nancy Pelosi, she's being pulled to the left by people who are more liberal in her party. At the same time, I think she wants to get something done to prove there's a reason for having her there. Nobody's better at whipping votes than she is. I think she likes to make a deal. I think the president likes to make a deal. He got burned by his own people last time around. The Freedom Caucus got in there, and while I agree with so many things that they stand for, at the end of the day, if you want to get something done, you have to get together and get something done. She might be able to do that. I love what she's been doing to woo other Democrats. So if you read all the articles, it's so fun. She had this huge dinner at Osteria Marini, which is this very expensive Italian restaurant.
Sounds
She's
delicious.
wining and dining. She had this huge dinner for members and their spouses at Statuary Hall. And when you have these new members coming in who are saying, I'm sleeping in my office because I can't afford rent or food, and she's bribing them with food, it reminds me that everybody comes to Washington poor, and then they leave very rich. And they don't get paid that much while they're there. So I always wonder how you get so rich in the swamp on that small
Someone tell me, because I have no idea. Julian, what do you think about this? Because Pelosi's making the argument that she's going to be a caretaker speaker. She's going to pass more power down to the next generation.
I think it's just a battle right now of the want for change and the want for new faces, fresh ideas versus experience and the leadership that she has proven to have. And I ultimately don't know what's going to win out, but I think that that's the battle right now. And look, if there were another serious contender, we'd be talking about them right now.
My prediction is all eyes on the Progressive Caucus. They are supposed to have 90 members. 13 members will be chairman. I think something like 30 subcommittee chairmen. Those are the people that are going to give Nancy Pelosi a hard time and be trying to pull her to the left, essentially playing the same role that the Freedom Caucus played to Republicans. That's what I'm looking for.
And we'll watch all these new moderates who won in Midwestern states who ran saying they were not going to vote for her as speaker. I think a lot of them are going to have to back that vote up. This will be very interesting to watch.
It's going to be interesting,
Okay.
We can agree. We agree.
We agreed twice today. Stay tuned. Stay tuned because more Outnumbered in just a moment. We'll be back.